Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron is facing a backlash after he said that Britain is considering formal recognition of a Palestinian state in a speech to Arab ambassadors in London, apparently not approved by Downing Street, and before he set off for a tour of the Middle East. Well, joining me now to discuss this and another few stories is Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, who's Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Good morning to you, Fleur.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. First of all, let's talk about what Lord Cameron had to say. Our Foreign Secretary, former Prime Minister, of course, he's been on the diplomatic circuit before. But Downing Street is saying, well, you know, he didn't say anything really very different from before, but he's basically saying that, you know, the UK is considering whether to formally recognise a Palestinian state and that the government had a responsibility to work towards a two-state solution. Your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said he doesn't think there is a two-state solution. Certainly that's what Joe Biden in America is pushing. Were you surprised to hear what Lord Cameron had to say?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's been the policy of most European countries, the UK, the US, to call for a two-state solution. And in general, if there was a partner for peace in the region, then most Israelis would support a two-state solution. But they talk about this like if we had, or we could be negotiating with Gandhi on the other side. Well, unfortunately, we have corrupt and genocidal terrorist leaders. So where the theory of a two-state solution, it might be a great idea, the practice of it, especially after October 7th, a war that we didn't start, you know, the support that Hamas has in the Palestinian street. Hamas doesn't want a two-state solution. They've made it very clear. They were on TV about a week ago saying, we want the complete destruction of Israel.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? Because, I mean, we often talk about, who, dealings with Palestinian Authority, perhaps, or, who would these negotiations and things happen with. But there isn't a moderate leadership of the Palestinians. Even the ones who are so-called moderates just aren't as extreme as, Hamas or, Hezbollah, who have a large population of Palestinian refugees as well. Where this state would be exactly, the borders, who would be eligible to live there, not just the people of Gaza, one would assume. These things all have to be negotiated. But a lot of people are saying that this effectively is a reward to Hamas for one of the worst massacres in living memory, where you commit this massacre, the world is in uproar, and then you get recognition of a Palestinian state, in which case we've basically said to terrorists, what you did worked.
Well, Julia, also it ignores the fact that we've tried. The Peel Commission, which is what UK in 36, was creating and planning a two-state solution. In 48, the UN offered the two-state solution. The Palestinians said no, and Israel said yes. Then we started a process, after 3 bloody wars in 2000, in the 90s in Madrid, that culminated in a very generous offer by Ehud Barak to Arafat. We could be celebrating 23 years of a Palestinian state, and yet Arafat chose to turn around and go into urban warfare, which was a second intifada. Then again, in 2009, Ehud Olmert this time offered everything Mahmoud Abbas, the still current leader of the PA, said he wanted. He also rejected it. And in between that, in 2005, we unilaterally left the Gaza Strip, pulling out 8,000 Jews along with us, in order to give the Palestinian leadership a chance to create the beginnings of a state. And what did they create? A terrorist base funded by Iran. So again, in theory, a two-state solution may be a good idea, but in practice, it hasn't worked because they ideologically do not want it. And I think this is the big mistake that people make with the conflict. They think it's a territorial conflict. This is not a territorial conflict. This is an ideological conflict. The problem of this conflict is not that there isn't a Palestinian state. The problem of this conflict is that there's a Jewish state that the Palestinian leadership do not accept as a reality. Okay. And that's the first problem that we have with the statement.
Can I also ask you about, there's talk about possible ceasefire, some sort of deal for return of more hostages, in return for a ceasefire. But this has come as we've seen this extraordinary video. We're going to play it out on screen right now, but of Israeli soldiers, IDF soldiers, dressed as civilians, but also crucially as doctors, raiding a hospital in the West Bank to kill suspected Hamas terrorists. They killed 3 alleged terrorists in the clandestine operation. This took place on Tuesday. Palestinian media released the CCTV video footage from the hospital in Jenin, brandishing assault rifles, say some dressed as medics. Now, we know that Israel is very clear. You know, if you do what Hamas did to us on October the 7th, we will avenge you. Like with the Munich, attack. We will hunt you down and we will get you eventually, whenever it is. I haven't got an issue with that. I haven't got an issue with them killing Hamas. And one of Hamas terrorists out is a good thing for the world and a good thing for the Palestinian people, by the way, as well. However, when Israel criticises Hamas for using hospitals and schools as bases for their weaponry and for firing missiles and the tunnels underneath, it's a bit rich for Israel to do that, to then dress their own IDF soldiers as medics in a hospital to get in. Isn't it? That's pretty hypocritical.
Well, Julia, I spoke to 2 experts yesterday about this, and in fact, this was an impending attack that was being planned in the hospitals because, of course, Hamas have turned all civilian places like hospitals and mosques and schools into terror bases. And so, from my understanding, there was an impending terrorist attack that was being planned and was, going to be executed very shortly.
You're saying that justifies them dressing as medics? Couldn't they have all just dressed as civilians?
Or soldiers? Ultimately, we don't want to.
I've got to be honest with you. If you're brandishing a gun running through a hospital, I'm not quite sure why dressing in medic scrubs makes you any less noticeable.
Unfortunately, I'm not a military expert, but all I know is that this was an attack that was being planned, and this was a preemptive strike and arrest on an impending attack that was being planned in a hospital, as we've seen since the 7th of October, that Hamas have cynically used hospitals and schools and mosques and everywhere where, even people's houses and everywhere where people are there, civilians are there trying to get on with it. It's very interesting that in the Gaza Strip, with 2 million people, there's 30 hospitals. And in Israel, with 10 million people, there's 8 hospitals. And now we understand why, because most of them were actually a cover for military and terrorist installations.
OK. Really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. That's Fleur Hassan-Nahoum. Thank you. Let's bring in Conservative commentator Benedict Spence to the conversation. I know you follow what goes on in the Middle East closely as well. I've got no issue with the IDF taking out Hamas soldiers. They're in a war. It's what they do. It's what, frankly, a lot of countries do. Yes. But dressing as medics when they make these accusations, justified accusations against Hamas, is that hypocritical?
No, I don't think it is. I think the point is if Palestinian organisations, and it's not just Hamas, let's be very clear, there are more of them, and they do operate in the West Bank as well. If they are using hospitals for military purposes or to hold military individuals, actually, I think then you're just playing by the same rules. If that's what you need to do in order to infiltrate...
that's the thing. No, but this is the thing.
What is the alternative?
You don't play by the same rules as terrorists. They're a democratic nation state. This is an army representing a country that's one of our allies. They don't get to play by the same rules as Hamas because Hamas doesn't play by any rules because they're a terrorist organisation, which is why we shouldn't treat these two sides as the same.
How many civilians died in this raid?
No, 0.
Should Israel have just bombed the hospital? Israel is criticised when it warns people, we're going to bomb this hospital, get everybody out. It's criticised when it sends in covert operatives to try and simply assassinate 2 people. What's it supposed to do? I have no issue with this at all. It's a terrorist organisation, a genocidal terrorist organisation. I think that this was a relatively rather humane operation in order to get people into position as deep into the hospital as they could without having to start shooting people who just got in the way. I really don't see that there's a problem with this. Western nations do similar sorts of operations when they're doing it, but we all seem to be the ones that criticise Israel. Oh, we're very good.
Israel's held to a far higher account than
standard
than any other country. Are you hopeful we are going to see some sort of ceasefire? Let's talk about this 45-day ceasefire and more hostages being exchanged.
Well, Lord Cameron's speech was actually very clear on this, that there could only be a Palestinian state if Hamas left the Gaza Strip and it gave up its arms and there was a guarantee not to attack Israel. So
they're not going to do it.
Well, this is exactly the thing. I don't think it's so much him. Whether or not it's been guaranteed approved by the government or not, I think this is more about, because he's going to Amman actually this week, this is about putting pressure on other Arab governments to put pressure on the Palestinian Authority to say, look, there is the possibility that we could do this without Israel, but you need to step up to the plate and you need to accept that there are conditions that you won't like, but you'll have to meet.
This is it. Again, we know so much the aid that is going to these organisations is from other Arab states, don't we?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.